Hello and welcome everybody to the fifth Contract Standards Work Group call. My name is Maxwell. I'm a community moderator and contributor working with DevHub, and I'm looking forward today to us looking at a new token NEP and coming to a decision about it. So here's some, background about the agenda. We'll just go through these things before we get into the meat of it. Just going to give some context about the Near developer ecosystem and introduce all the participants. And then we'll get into the main meat of the discussion and open it up to Q&A if anybody has shown up to ask some questions. So to get started, let's discuss the purpose of today's call. We're here to vote and come to a final decision on NEP 393, which is a new token standard for what you call a soul-bound token on the Near protocol. And we're also here to celebrate the effort and time that everybody invested into this NEP, as this has gone through a rigorous review process and has taken the time and effort of a lot of subject matter experts as well. So before we jump into this, let's give a little bit more background on our process. So DevHub is a current Near initiative that we're looking to decentralize Near's development and really open it up to any interested members of the community. We provide the social structure and tools to empower anybody to contribute to Near, from submitting ideas on DevHub for people to discuss to actually contributing the code that we may eventually implement into the protocol or as a contract standard or something like that. So today, our main tool for interfacing with this organization is this neardevhub.org. It's a BOSS component, and this is our main platform for Near developers to contribute and stay informed. We have various communities on this website that you can join and get involved in or create your own. And this is a great place to meet with other like-minded individuals to brainstorm, make proposals, and also to get technical support and also funding. Now, in addition to these informal groups that we have on DevHub, we also have our formalized work groups who help make decisions on various ecosystem areas, such as protocol and contract standards. And these groups have selected recognized experts who engage with the community and help review proposals in a fair and timely manner. So, for example, they help come to decisions on technical proposals that you may want to get integrated across the ecosystem, such as contract standards or improvements to the protocol. Anyone can submit an idea for a technical proposal using an NEP. It's our formalized format for making improvements to the protocol. And we have a process that's detailed in this NEP 001 that we take all of these through to come to a final decision, review, implement, all those sorts of things. As part of this process, we have 4 key responsibilities in this formalized process. We have the author of the NEP themselves, who writes and presents the proposal, takes it through reviews. We have the moderator, which is Ori or myself, who facilitates this process and discussion and kind of helps to move things along. We have technical reviewers who get involved to go through the proposal and the implementation and kind of submit comments, give feedback and suggestions on what things people can change. And then finally, we have this work group itself, which functions to approve and finalize the proposal. So these are the 3 stages that every NEP will go through. First, we have an author that creates a draft. We move it to a review. It gets reviewed by reviewers. People give suggestions. It gets revised. And all of this is done in a very transparent, asynchronous way on GitHub and sometimes on DevHub. And finally, once we take it through all these reviews and all these edits and approvals, we take it to this final formalized voting call with the working group, which is what we're here to do today. All right, so let's highlight the participants that are actually involved in this NEP. So we have Robert, who is the author of this proposal. We have Ori, who helped to move things along, and myself, who is here just to lead the call. We have our reviewers, Kazander Dad and Alex A. And then we have the contract standards work group working as our approvers. We also invited the wallet group to participate, but in the end, they chose not to. Just wanted to point out that as Robert is the author of this proposal, he will not be voting whether or not to approve this this NEP, which means that it's only 2 people voting on this, but I guess that's what we're left with. And now I guess we'll get into the meat of the actual NEP. So first, I'd like to have Robert present a summary of the NEP and why that's important. And from there, we'll have the work group discuss and ultimately get to the final decision. So Robert, if you're there, I'd like to take it away.
Sure. Yes. Hi everyone. Could you switch to the NEP page itself? Maybe. Like if you can open the NEP. Okay. Anyways,
sorry,
like this.
Just a moment.
Right. Anyways, like the summary here is in the screenshot. Right. So the goal of the standard is really to provide a standard interface, which will allow to compose different contracts and different use cases, yes, for SBTs in a way how we use it for fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, or like even DAOs, which is coming up soon. So I think it's like obvious why we need a standard interface for all sorts of tokens. And like here, the major thing is that SBT, like it took us probably 8 months, right, to like get into this final shape. And the main finding here is that SBT is really not NFT. Initially, we wanted to model it as NFT, it's a non-fungible token, but eventually we arrived earlier this year, in fact, to the model where we really separate it. And another thing is that, SBT must have internal economical cost of transferability. So transferability is possible, but it must be limited in a way that it, as the name suggests, so soul-bound token. So the transferability is limited, yes, to keep bounding the token right to the soul. So this is what it's all about. We at the beginning we explain how this banding works. What's the soul? So soul is basically a property of an account that it has kind of a digital identity, and the main focus of this design is really like a human identity. So this leads us to like various decisions. Notably, the major one is the separations of concern between the registry, so where the tokens are registered, so the balance book, and the issuer, so who and how issues the tokens. So traditionally, this is done in the same smart contract. So let's say if you have your own smart contract, let's say USDT, then it will have both these use cases coded in the same contract, right? So it will have the logic of issuing token, and also it will have authorizing, yes, the issuance, and also a logic for recording the token. Yes, here for the reasons mentioned previously, so bounding the soul to an account, yes, we decided to separate it. It also unlocks a few interesting properties, notably what I call semi-atomic transfers. So we can like really do some migrations between accounts in a way that it will limit the let's say Sybil attacks, or like a Sybil behavior that a malicious user, yes, would like to keep them. I mean, avoid the system of really bounding the soul to an account. Yeah, so that, like from high level, this is the motivation. We have a primary use case which we are working on for a while already, right? So I am human. It's already in production. We got 2 beta releases, and finally the final release around April. this year. We also like successfully changed the issuer. So we proved various flows within that model. So in our first beta release, we had like one issuer which we used to qualify humanity. Over a time, we changed it. We proved that the model works. It allows for composability, notably for elections, for voting, for nominations, for like now the next area of research implementation is kind of a kudos, right? So it's not only about like approving humanity, but you can also like prove with SBT your membership to a community, and again like allow it to, I mean, combining it then with a humanity. So let's say you have a proof that you are a member of a community and you are a human, then you can have like a more specific rules for let's say for a governance, or other notable examples, yes, are related to a finance, where you want to, let's say, can create like a more dedicated instruments, while knowing that, say, someone is, okay, firstly a human, or maybe an institution with a specific background, or financial requirements. So all of this is possible. Also, like we don't here need to share like any specific information. So it's open, the standard, the whole standard is open. How the, I mean, like the relation between the token and the proof of what this token represents, right? Is not really a part of the standard. This is open in the same way how, let's say, proof of what is called proof of reserve, right? For let's say various stable coins is done. So I think that's enough for the like a general introduction. We have like many more use cases described in the in that NEP. So yeah, please have a look.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for that summary and your submission and work on this NEP. Robert, would you like to like give a quick overview of like potential benefits, that sort of thing, like just in general of the of introducing the, I know you just touched on some of this in your overview, but
right. So actually like this slide's also like already, let's say, outlined that. The main use case here is really like, you know, creating that kind of a properties for the accounts, which are not possible today with NFT. So for example, NFT could be very good for representing a real world asset, right? Like maybe a picture traditionally, or a car, a wine, a unit of a gold, right? But SBT is more suited for property ownership. I mean, human property, or let's say entity of property, right? This kind of things, right? And finally, right, like because this property is bound to the soul, yes, we have like all this definition, right? It allows us to create some Sybil resistant mechanisms for many use cases. Also, like, you know, like the whole thing is really driven by the decentralized society. So if you look like more broadly in the research of decentralized societies, the soul bound is really like the foundation of the model proposed by that idea.
cool, thank you. All right. So we have like some of these concerns that were posted on GitHub. A lot of these are still marked as open. Would anybody like to like take us through some of these and whether we should, you know, mark them as resolved, completed, or if they're
right? So actually we had,
open?
actually we had a discussion about it. I kept them open because I thought that we would close them. Basically, we'll make this decision today, and if there is various concerns, yes, that will be like publicly shared here. So I guess that with two other standard contract standard workgroup members, we basically like, you know, mark them, or I mean mark them like as a closed, or add maybe some additional notes. How about that?
Yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable. Can you, Robert, probably like read or like contextualize each individual point and
right?
Then
yeah. So let me go one by one, and then let's say we do like a voting. So the first one is about like this NAP so NAP 171 is NFT, right? And that's one of the early concern where we were really discussing. That's already from the last year, in fact. If SBT should follow some of the NFT interfaces or events in order to like keep compatibility. And the reason for the motivation for having that compatibility was really to have for free the support from the existing ecosystem, right? Tools, indexers, and so on. Over a time, we realized that that would require some patching, that it's not desirable. And instead of like adding a compatibility layer, which could potentially create wrong implementations or maybe like technical depths for the future, yes, we decided basically to really separate it. So even if some events would make sense from NFT perspective, right, we decided, okay, let's just separate it because those two are two different entities. Also, like another motivation for like the separation was that we agreed to use the class, which is like this, another level of abstraction. So if anyone is familiar with this multi-token idea, multi-token standard, yes, we can have kind of like a class or a namespace for the token. This is similar to what's in Ethereum ERC 1155, or like a fractional NFTs. Here we adopted it from the get-go, basically because it really composes well about like certificates, some additional proofs in a way how the issuer would like to like qualify or separate just, let's say, different SBTs for the same user. So overall, the founding from various comments is that, okay, we don't do like any compatibility layer, and we do dedicated interfaces and dedicated events.
Yeah, this was originally brought from my side when the original NAP was submitted with more closely resembling non-transferable NFTs, and the argument was that we don't we would create a lot of burden for the indexers and the rest of the ecosystem, collapsing the two. So I was insisting on having a different prefix and like a completely different namespace. And now looking at the final version of the NAP, I'm glad that we did go that route, because there are many more specific extensions to those events, to the methods, and they would be very hard and non-intuitively smashed into the existing like NFT NAP if we would follow that route. So I'm glad that it's a separate thing and we don't need to discuss that compatibility and burden that could put into the ecosystem. So totally agree. That's resolved now.
Correct. Yes, and like this argument of a technical depth, it turned out, I think, to be real.
Yep.
Okay, so the next one is, I mean, does anyone else have like a different comment? If no, let's go forward. Okay, no. So memo fields. In most of the, let's say, transactions, yes, we include the memo field related to, so again, like SBT could be like used for some legal terms, legal actions, yes, which may have some legal or relate to like a legal action. Okay, so on-chain transaction, yes, which have to be referenced to some real world action. And this is where we have like a memo field. Think about it like, in money transfers, bank transfers, we have a memo field as well, which we use, which we call a reference. In various other, let's say, blockchains, yes, the memo field is part of the transaction rather than like a function call in NEP 141. We have the memo field, right? So the concern was, okay, do we want to include it in event or not? So the reason is that, okay, I propose here to basically not include it. It's part of the transaction. There is an event. Event is always linked to a transaction. So there is no need to copy it, right? So like the idea of the event here, okay, like the motivation, at least I want to, or the narrative, yes, I want to provide here is that, event should be something that, like many indexers or off-chain applications will listen for. And then like, based on that, like react. So let's say it should like have something that is like a it should not be a copy of the transaction, right? But it should be like really meaningful. What is the purpose of the transaction? What is the transaction about, right? The transaction, for example, can be a bundle of few different actions, like let's say a transfer, maybe account creation, or I don't know, maybe a new pool creation, bonding, things like that, right? So so technically that's why we have these events, right? Because we can have few different actions in a single transaction.
Yeah,
right. So
but sorry for interrupting you. I think we don't need to go into like very deep
okay.
details. So overall, I think we are like all in agreement that
Okay.
Memo is like optional, and even in NFT world, it's not very widely used. So let's live without it as part of the standard. If anybody needs it, they can add it. No, it's extendable. The events. The support would be limited, but it's fine, I guess. So moving on to the next one, I can probably take it. So there is a concern about token spam, and given that you cannot burn and like transfer away the tokens, there was broader concern that, well, what to do with those soulbound tokens issued to your account. And I think it's the same problem all around in FTs and NFTs as well. Spam and flood is like it's there, and people will spend their tokens, and I don't think it's job of the standard, and it's not the job of the owner to burn those tokens. So I think we can just rely on the wallets and other entities who display the data to just filter out the spam. That's
right. So here actually, yes, like the concern was like, okay, that should we require it or not require it as a part of the standard? So from the very beginning, the standard defined a burn event that, tokens can be burned. However, the standard doesn't require a specific function. And the reason for that is that the burn function can be different for various registries, right? So let's say also it could change. Like, let's say if you want to be more specific how the burn works, what arguments, what extra, let's say, arguments should be provided. That's why we don't keep it, right? It's not needed for composability here. If we will find like a solid use case, we can always add it, right? But as an extension, but
that's counted, it's resolved now for current state. Yeah, let's move on. Multiple registries. Can you shed some light on it?
Right. So there was also like a spicy discussion about it. So mainly because we have the separation of concern that there's issuer and a registry. And what if one issuer will try to issue the same token for multiple registries? So first of all, like we cannot dictate that there is only, let's say, one blessed registry. It doesn't work in the permissionless blockchain, right? So we can make recommendation, right? But we cannot require it. So the concern is valid. Like if one issuer will issue the same token in the registries and then kind of a duplicate. But the same argument. So our recommendation is, of course, to not do it, but we cannot enforce it. And the same concern, in fact, is in any other traditional token, right? So if you have an NFT representing again your picture and the issuer decides to copy it, you can prevent it, right? If there will be like a second Bored Apes collection exactly the same by the same issuer, you cannot do anything about it, right? So it's a permissionless blockchain. So that's basically
yeah, I would call it out of scope for the standard.
Exactly.
So it's more concern for the audit for a specific contract rather than the standard.
Also, like, I mean, we made a recommendation, like, you know, how this should be interpreted, right? Like how it should be used, but that was the founding here, right? We made the recommendation.
Yeah, let's move next.
Yeah, the multi-token, so like to approve it or to not have it. Yes, so at the beginning we're talking about it, discussing like who needs it, who doesn't need it. At the end of the day, we found that, okay, let's do it because it provides a better model if you do it from the beginning, that issuers can like, you know, really separate the different SBTs. In fact, also in I Am Human, right? It turns out to be helpful because let's say there is a community SBT, right? And community SBT can have like a few different types, like OG, or maybe I don't know, like a community master, something like that. And those will be represented as a different class. So that's the multi-token approach. So again, like the months of application, I mean, using it in big project turned out to be really helpful for proving this approach.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Though it seems like it's a different approach. Like it's not completely multi-token standard. It's just some like variation of it that makes sense for the SBT, right?
Correct, kind of, right? Because I mean, the near multi-token standard is for the fungible tokens, right? So this is like a multi-token for, I mean, I still call it multi-token. It's technically not a multi-token, right? But the idea is similar, is that we have like another level in the model.
You have token ID and you can have numbers, like several of them.
Yeah, and you have like a class. So like you have issuer, yes, and any issuer can have like, you know, the site. So I mean, like a few principal examples. So let's say you have university, right? And then the class will be that, okay, what is your graduation year? I mean, the class will represent both your graduation year and the studies that you made, right? So instead of like creating multiple issuers, each issuer will represent, let's say, a tuple, you know, the university, the graduation year, and the study you did. So instead of that, you have like an issuer, which is a university. So you keep the entity, which is, you know, providing the certificate the same. And the graduation, the study will be here modeled by the class. And then each SBT is basically like each certificate for that study. So that's like one example. Another, like I mentioned, with the community SBT.
Okay, sounds good. Let's move on.
Right. So use of milliseconds as a time unit. Yeah, so again, like various comments here. The motivation about like using milliseconds. Okay, like we were considering seconds, milliseconds, or nanoseconds. Right. So yeah, let's say default in year is of course nanosecond, right? But like if you think about like a block propagation, right? I mean, how where this millisecond is used. So the millisecond is only used for the expiration time, right? And given that, you know, all of these are transactions, we don't need to go to this, let's say, nanosecond precision. And if I remember correctly, okay, I don't remember now, but if I remember correctly, NFT is also using the milliseconds. So that was like a second argument. I mean, initially I wanted to use seconds, but because I think NFT was using milliseconds, we decided to keep milliseconds here as well.
Just for context, it's a hard balance to strike here. The contract environment exposes the nanosecond time precision from near blockchain. So like if you just use the like nearest decay standard function to get the current timestamp, you will get it in nanoseconds precision already. So you wouldn't need to do any operations, and like you just use that number. The problem, however, is that it doesn't fit into like number precision value in JavaScript. So it's more than 2 in power 53, and then it just loses the precision, and it's like it doesn't matter that much, but it's cutting some like precise number at the end. And seconds is not enough because it's basically we could have several blocks at the same second, and probably not a great idea to have like potentially colliding two events in single second.
Right. I mean, here you wouldn't have like a collision, yes, because you always have like a strict rule. I don't know either if it's the first one or not. But anyways, like milliseconds have basically way more advantages here, right? It's also like compatible with what we use in the web. So that was like the final finding. Right. So I think we agree.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. So the next one is burn. I think we already like made that. I repeated here burn because like actually part of the standard and the token spam, so kind of similar, right? So in the token spam, I mean, Vlad already like commented here. I extended that comment, yes, that we don't add burn as a part of the standard, but we keep the burn event as a part of the standard.
Yeah, it's the same story with NFT, FT events as well. Like the mint and burn methods that not make sense, but events are very valuable for indexers to properly track what's going on.
Okay, so the next one is the salt transfer. So the salt transfer is like this unique thing, or unique feature, yes, of SBT. Yes, in fact, that's what we really qualify as SBT. So salt transfers is like a special action, let's call it this way, where we allow, in fact, a token to be transferred by a user rather than like clawback or enforced by the issuer or kind of recoverability. And the reason for the salt transfer is that, you know, like users at the beginning don't think that much about the identities, right? Like very often, like we realize that later down the line that, okay, we made some mistakes, but, you know, creating many identities, or like at the beginning creating our, let's say, public identities where we would like to stay rather not fully public, and this kind of things. However, right, because of the composability, how it works here, and maybe like some mechanism would enforce us, you know, to merge some accounts, or like prove that for whatever reason, right, that, you know, like one account should be merged into another one. So like, you know, we want to move the soul from one account to another one. Then we need to have some way, yes, to handle that use case. So this is really what the salt transfer is. And at the beginning, the salt transfer was part of the standard, so the function. Later on, like firstly, as we changed the implementation, and that triggered me, in fact, to not put it as a part of the standard in the same way. And the motivation here is again the same, like as a mint. Mint is not part of the standard, but mint event is part of the standard. So here is the same thing, right? Salt transfer is not something that, you know, one contract can request for another one, but it's something that, you know, should be rather ad hoc, and we didn't include it in a standard. Later, if needed, probably it can come as an extension. Today we don't see a need that this should be part of the standard. However, yes, again, the event is part of the standard.
All right, and I guess I'll just kind of quickly go through this last one. There's a couple concerns about privacy. We can see here that the comment 1 and 2 are, we'll just pull this up really quickly. These are quite involved answers. So if people want to know more, please just take a look at the net page and and read through the comments here. So we'll just kind of move things along from here, I guess, if that's all right with everybody.
Yes, this privacy was like discussed lengthily, like over like a few threads. Not sure. Should I like summarize it a bit?
If you can, yeah, maybe like a 1-minute summary, something like that. If that's
Right. So there were a few concerns that, since the SBT kind of can qualify your identity, right? It can be used to deduct like a real identities, right? So it's a valid concern, right? But if someone would like to like specifically deduct it by, so my main point is here the following, right? Like we really recommend that to not include any personal information in SBT, right? But it's in fact like cannot be enforceable, because I can create a token and I call it deducts, and I can I know all the account for whatever reason, and I will that will be non-transferable NFT, and that token will have like a memo field or whatever, a reference, and I will be a troll, and I will just mint it for Ori. Ori will not be able to to Ori's account, and I will put his name, his address, everything there. I can do it. This is a permissionless blockchain. In the same way, I can do it like in a spreadsheet and share it with everyone, like Google spreadsheet, and share it with everyone, right? If I will do it anonymously, right, then there is like no even like a legal litigation that someone can find me too, because I'm sharing personal information openly in the internet. So yes, it is a legal, it is a real concern, right? We cannot do much about it in a let's say open permissionless world. We can only do recommendation to keep it private. Also, yes, I think that we should go towards more like a ZK related stuff. So this standard is like more following the approach of like a traditional token standards, right? Where token balances and everything is public, right? Because it's really like targeting existing neural ecosystem, and hopefully, yes, this will be upgraded once we have more primitives, more work done related to zero knowledge frameworks directly in here. And I think like the standard won't need to change, yes, because then we would like the SBT can represent a proof, or like a various proofs, yes, without telling anything, right? So it could be like even like the reason that my account has an SBT might not even like mean anything, because let's say the proof can be like even not valid, right? So there's like a various ways how this can be upgraded, but that's more an open research.
okay. Sounds great. All right.
Actually, there is one more, like we discussed it, like one more concern. I think it's about the token ID. Vlad, not sure. Do you want to talk about it? We didn't include it here, but there was like a chat about it 2 hours ago.
Yeah, well,
So if you want, I can
there was a concern about the actual type of token ID. The original proposal, like the current NAP seems to be asking people to use unsigned integer up to 2 in
long int.
yeah, power, and then in JS world, if you try to deserialize it, you will lose the precision if the value is more than 2 in the power 53. So my proposal was in order to avoid the hassle for JavaScript developers who want to be compliant with the standard, is to either turn it into a string, which was the approach taken by NFT contracts and standards, or explicitly state that the value should not be more than 2 in the power 53. So JavaScript developers can, sleep without problems, thinking about their like token ID could collide with something else by just, leveraging the numbers. And yeah, what did you decide to go with?
Right. Yeah, thanks. So that's also like kind of an interesting concern. I mean, like already at the beginning in the design, yes, I made like a narrative about it. And there are like a few motivations for me to use a number rather than a string. So like firstly, number, it's also a kind of like moving the sorry, like using a string is in fact asking developers to use a library rather than a native type directly. Correct, because like the JavaScript doesn't work with that. Like even if you use number, I mean, if you want to use number and then like really put it in a string, there has to be a library as to validate that. So like if you are going in that direction, then we are already, let's say, asking everyone, okay, sorry, you need to use a library. This is how it works. And my motivation is, in fact, like from the beginning, we have still thousands of years before this will be like a really problem for the JavaScript developers based on an analysis I made. And issuers like technically should not have that problem because they can like even combine it with the class, which I mentioned before, which in fact not doubles, yes, but powers to the space. So in fact, like I require in the registry to use like a sequence because issuer cannot request the registry. So in this model, in the current model, in the interface, issuer cannot specify the token ID. It's the registry which has the balance book and keeps track of the tokens. So registry doesn't know like what should be like the next token ID or like what are the free, unless they double or copy the balance book. Right. So I require in the registry that they should use like a sequence numbers to like avoid potential problems related to like say different values, like different token distributions. So that's one. Second, like combining with a class ID that the space is in fact like open not for thousands years but for millions years, right? So basically I don't see it a concern, and I would rather prefer to have like a native types. And JavaScript is evolving. Maybe we'll use WASM in the next 10 years or maybe in 100 years. So yeah, hard to say like what will be the decision, what will be the best decision like in the next 100 years or 1,000 years. And based on this analysis, I think for 253, right, it gives us, I don't remember, but if you open it, it's like tens of thousands years, or let me quickly find it.
All right. I think
it doesn't matter, but
covers that. Shall we move on from now?
Yeah, 28,000 years.
Good overview. Okay. All right. So moving along with the NEP process, we need a 2/3 majority to move forward with this net, which I suppose in this case means that both of the non-authors would need to approve. We've already had indications provided on the GitHub discussion thread. Here's a quick summary. We have an inclination of yes from Vlad and from Sasha.
Sasha, I'd like to invite you to speak first, probably, given that you didn't have a chance to put a word here.
Yeah, hello. So basically, like my idea is that we're on the stage where we just got a reasonable design, like reasonable design variation from everything we discussed, and we can spend one more year to polish it. However, it just doesn't make sense. And like from my perspective is that it's totally reasonable to kick this standard off, to make some impact on the near ecosystem. Like let's move on. So this is my perspective. You can see that we have 333 comments on the GitHub conversation thread, and of course we have trade-offs, and in any complex design you will have trade-offs, you will have some unpolished things. And at this point, like I believe like we fixed critical things, we don't have red flags at this moment. And you can see that Robert just had put a lot of thoughts, and he can, he can not just explain, but deeply go into every detail. So that's why I give like my approval, my consent, and yeah, my consent is here.
Cool. Yeah. From my point of view, I totally agree with what Sasha just said. Basically, there is always room for perfection, and we can always find what to tune. But I don't want to hold us back from potential much bigger changes once we will have a real production use. I think we can always revisit and issue a new standard. No problem if that turns out to be like the findings that we will learn will outweigh the problems of migration. So overall, I feel like the standard is already good enough to be implemented and go in production. And it's not a huge scope for integration from the like wallets point of view or indexers. So it should be fairly straightforward for them, which was my concern initially with non-transferable NFTs, for example. So yeah, I totally support the snap. So let's get it running.
Awesome. And Vlad, you mentioned a few next steps here.
Yeah, I tried to outline the immediate next steps for us to basically be on the same page. So first, we need to fill out the changelog section in the NAP. Robert, can you do that, please? So basically, what it should include is per previous examples. You can open previous snaps for references. It should there will be a video recording of this call, and you please integrate the benefits and concerns tables from previous discussion that we already have here. So just bundle it together into the NAP document, so it's much easier for the future reference instead of scanning through the over 300 comments for whoever will read it in the future. And second step would be for I can take it. I will just approve and merge the NAP on the repo itself as I'm taking the moderator role here. And Robert, then it's probably on you again to endorse cellbound token support in wallets. There is no other way around. We need some champion to brag about it, to show the benefits and the use cases, and I'm sure that you have all the context there to make it true. So I hope this makes sense to you guys and we can move forward.
So it sounds like we're all in agreement about the approval, correct? Just making sure that we're formalizing this correctly.
Yep.
Sorry. All right.
Yeah, and the final maybe word is that, we got a really, real world adoption with NDC for that, and it took many people, in fact, it's not only me, yes, but many people votes into shaping it. So I would also like to thank you, everyone from NDC for helping with that and moving it forward.
Oh yeah, sure. We actually have a slide, right, Maxwell, about just mentioning the
thankings and
the thanking slide.
Of course.
Yeah, so
it's
definitely it's important to recognize that we have over a dozen people can just leave in the comments and reviewing this NAP document on GitHub, but I'm sure there were other reviewers of the code of the smart contract itself. So it's a truly community effort here, and I'm glad that we have so many people pushing it forward, championing it, and it's our pleasure to support even though we like as a working group members, we need to be a bit harsh and making sure we're standing on the guard of.
Okay, so maybe let me like endorse you like a few people if
Sure,
I
yeah,
can.
go ahead.
Right. So firstly, I mean Noah, with who I started that. So thanks Noah also for like going into the reviews, helping me with like putting the text together. And then Henry, the NDC champion, for like helping on like getting the group together and working with that. Then like every developer in NDC for like really using it, using it, testing it, like playing with it. Alex Stratum from I forgot the project name, right? So he's championing like another NFT project. So he also put like all independent, like few independent votes into that. And yeah, finally the work group members. So thank you, Vlad and Sasha, for like few reviews. I know that it wasn't like easy for you, like to go through like all the side comments, because then like we were bombarded with hundreds of comments from multiple people, and then you had to decide, okay, what to do. I mean, should I read this 100 of comments or not, right? So yeah, and like I said, everyone else from the NDC.
Yeah, and thank you, Robert, for championing it and pushing it through. Like since when it was open, it was open in September 14th last year. Yeah,
right.
so it was like and it started way before that, I imagine, given that you already came up with.
I was just looking it up when NearCon was, and we came in short of a year. July 16, I think, was NearCon, right? That's when we had the first hackathon about this.
NearCon was September, I think.
September something, yeah.
Was it September? All right. Sorry,
but
my
I was
bad.
already but I was already championing this idea in the summer. You're right.
Yeah, you were. So just a year. That's a lot of effort. Thank you, Robert.
At least it means that it aged enough, like a good wine.
Yeah.
Good comment.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
It's
thanks,
very
everybody.
important.
I guess I'll just put a bow on this then. If anybody's looking for ways to get involved in this kind of process in the future, just going to quickly highlight a few ways to get involved in the ecosystem. If you have a specific idea in mind, you could submit it using DevHub and find communities to collaborate with. You can work on and submit an NEP like the one that Robert worked on for such a long time here and put so much thought and effort into. And you can also view all these NEPs on the board on GitHub. These are the contract standard NEPs that are currently listed there right now. If anybody would like to submit more, that's where to do it. And of course, you can get involved in the contract standards community group here on Telegram. So you can kind of see that here. And if you're not already involved, we have more than 150 people there now, I think. So. And if you want to learn more, follow our Twitter and Telegram channels, and please use and interact with DevHub in the future. So thanks, everybody, and thank you for bearing with me on my first attempt at moderating one of these. Hopefully it gets a little bit smoother in the future. And yeah, again, thanks to everybody, and congratulations on all the hard work that people put in and all the deep thinking and all that. So yes, thank you very much. And we'll see you on the next one, I suppose. There's nothing scheduled for now, but keep an eye out. I know that the multi-token standard is still moving along, and hopefully we'll see more of that coming in the coming weeks. So, all right. Thanks everybody again for showing up.